Hey everyone, just wanted to take a couple minutes to explain what you need to do to complete the Poetry2 assignment. Take a look here. All right, so this assignment is it corresponds to the lesson here in week 3 on chapter 19, which was all about poetic language. So you're going to complete this assignment in a text submission, so you'll type your response right into the text box. Do not do any outside research for this assignment. You are expected to try your best to answer the questions in each task. If you do not get the answers correct, I will let you know that. There will be follow-ups to these poems next week, so you will get the correct information. But try on your own first. You get graded based on effort. Just try. Why risk getting a 0 and then just having to redo it anyway by using outside sources for your answers? Just try on your own. Okay? Task 1 asks you to read a poem called Dulce et Decorum Est by Wilfred Owen. I have attached a copy of that poem to the assignment instructions, but you can also find it on pages 606 to 607 of our textbook. So you are going to read the poem and then answer these 3 questions. Please number your answers as you type your responses. So question number 1 for Dulce et Decorum Est says, list 5 images found in the poem. This will not be a hard task because the poem is full of imagery. Choose 5, list those 5 images, and explain how each image that you've listed, what it's describing, what it tells us, how it relates to the poem in general, right? Don't just list the images. List an image and then explain what that image refers to, what it relates to in the poem. And do that for all 5 that you list. Number 2, list 5 similes or metaphors in the poem. There's a combination of both. So list 5 similes or metaphors, and for each one you list, explain what is being compared. Remember, a simile is comparing 2 things using the words like or as. A metaphor is comparing 2 things, but the 2 things are so similar, it's like they are the same thing. So if it's a simile that you've listed, what are the 2 things being compared? If it's a metaphor you've listed, what are the 2 things being compared? How does each one relate to the poem in general? And number 3, what do you think is the underlying meaning / theme of this poem? Be sure to consider your answers to questions 1 and 2, and be sure to carefully read the last 4 lines of the poem when you answer this question. I'm actually going to show you. All right. So what I'm talking about is these 4 lines right here, part of which are in a different language. And down here under the notes, it tells you what this phrase means in Latin. These 4 lines will help you figure out what this poem, what the purpose of this poem is, what the theme is. Okay? So you want to, for question 3, what is the theme of Dulce et Decorum Est? Think about what these images and similes and metaphors are telling us. Think about what the last 4 lines of the poem are telling us. What do you think is the theme? Don't tell me that the poem is about war or about how horrible war is. That's the subject matter of the poem, right? That's not the same thing as theme. Theme is the message the author is trying to convey, what they want us to walk away with, what they want us to think about. So how does the imagery, how do the similes and metaphors, and how do the last 4 lines of the poem help reveal the theme to us? What is the theme? Do your best. Task 2 is going to have you look at a second poem called What Lips My Lips Have Kissed by Edna St. Vincent Millay. And I have attached a copy of that poem to these instructions. And it's very similar setup here. The first thing you're going to do after you read the poem is list several images that are found in it and explain what each image is describing, what it tells us about the poem, and how it relates to the poem. I'd say at least 2 or 3 images. 2, identify the metaphor in the poem. Explain what this comparison is describing and what it tells us, if anything, about the poem. I give you a hint. I say, look at the last 6 lines as having a direct relationship with the first 8 lines. It seems like a random shift of ideas, but those 2 sections are directly related, and the poem's main metaphor lies within the last 6 lines. Let's take a look at that real quick and we'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've got the first 8 lines here, and then there's this gap, which indicates a shift into the last 6 lines. There is something, a metaphor in these 6 lines. And the comparison, you remember a metaphor is 2 things, right? The 2 things are both, it's here, but it relates to what's up here. So what's being compared in this section and this section? That's what you're trying to get at. But the metaphor itself is here in this section, the last 6 lines. Okay. And then question 3, what do you think is the underlying meaning / theme of this poem? So be sure to think about the imagery that you looked at up here and the metaphor that you looked for here. How does all of that help us figure out what the author was trying to convey? Do your best. Again, we are going to follow up on these 2 poems next week. I will go over both of them in detail, both the imagery, the similes, the metaphors, the themes, okay? But do your best to, just see where it takes you when you think, critically about the imagery and the similes and metaphors in both poems. See if it helps you get to what the underlying message might be. Okay? All right. All right. So do your best on that. No outside resources. Try to have it in by Sunday night. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out.